Jack, are you good?
I'm good, yep.
Yeah, come up and drop a stone during the prelude. I'm going to try to wake us up a little bit with some Rolling Stones.
That looks like a good song choice.
I thought so.
Much too loud, running up and down the stairs. Well, it seems to me that you have seen too much in too few years. And though you've tried, you just can't hide. Your eyes are edged with tears. You better stop and look around. Here it comes. Here it comes. Here it comes. But you were never brought up right. You were always spoiled with 1,000 toys, but still you cried all night. Your mother who neglected you owes $1 million tax, and your father's still perfecting ways of making sealing wax. You better stop and look around. Here it comes. I tried so hard to rearrange your mind, but after a while I realized you were disarranging mine. You better stop and look around. Here it comes. Here it comes. Here it comes. Here comes your 19 nervous breakdown. Toys, but still you cried all night. And your mother who neglected you owes $1 million tax, and your father's still perfecting ways of making sealing wax. You better stop and look around. Here it comes.
Good morning and welcome to the gathering at Northern Hills. I'm Jack Brennan, your service leader today. And on behalf of the GNH board and today's member speakers, Andrew Ketterer and Sera Morris, I want to say we are delighted to have you here in the sanctuary as well as on Zoom. We are particularly pleased to have Suzanne and Johannes Bjorner with us in person rather than their usual Zoom spot from Mexico. And Alan, can we have a look at who is on Zoom today? I can't read those names from over here, but yeah. Okay, hi everybody, thanks for joining us. And though he's not mentioned in your program among those who made this service happen, I want to also thank Koa Lewis, who worked this past week with Andrew and Sera on technical aspects of the presentation. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation, different from the multiple religious traditions in which spirituality and the nature of God are deemed decided and the path to God is mapped out for the believer. In UUism, we believe that each of us is his or her own best spiritual authority. Our lived experience as we discover ourselves and engage with others is the best authority for our own spiritual path, and all with a sincere desire to so engage are welcomed and honored here. Our key announcement today is to remind you that next week GNH will be participating in the joint UU service to be held at First Church beginning at 10:30 a.m., 15 minutes earlier than our normal starting time. Full details are on an insert in your order of service program, so please do have a look at that. But I want to note here from the podium that if you are unable to attend in person, Alan will have the service on video here in our sanctuary. And if you would want to do it from home, please note that it is not on our usual GNH Zoom link. You need to link up with the First Church YouTube channel. And I know that sounds impossibly hard, but I don't really think it is. There's a link in the insert, right, Tom? So you can do that from home. You just need to have the right link. And for today, for planning, I would just like two different shows of hands. Can you raise your hand if you think you are planning to go to First Church on your own next Sunday? And would anyone raise their hand, want to say they would like a ride? Okay. And I have, since she's back after being gone a while, I've asked Linda to light the chalice for us this morning.
Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy.
Andrew and Sera will speak to us today on the challenges of dealing with mental health issues. And while I don't know exactly what they're going to offer, Valerie and I personally have reason for heightened interest. Our family has come to strongly believe that our 39-year-old son Tim is on the autism spectrum, And last Sunday, shortly after we returned home from GNH, we learned that Tim was once again out of a job. He had been unable to control his temper in a clash with a supervisor. We had held high hopes for this job, so it has been a difficult week for us in that regard. But we and Tim are now on the path to have him do a 6 to 8 week comprehensive evaluation with a psychologist looking for an actual diagnosis that could help him gain access to some government services and health benefits. Our opening words chosen for today's service are from Elin, did I pronounce that right? Elin R. Sachs, author of The Center Cannot Hold, My Journey Through Madness. Dropping in and out of your own life for psychotic breaks or treatment in a hospital isn't like getting off a train at one stop and later getting back on at another. Even if you can get back on and the odds are not in your favor, you're lonely there. The people you boarded with originally are far, far ahead of you, and now you're stuck playing catch-up. And now please stand if you're able and join us in our opening hymn, We Are. It's number 1051 in your hymnal.
Stand and sing with me, guys. This song makes me out of breath. There's a lot of words, so do your best to follow me.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
I can't go on to it, I'm out of breath. The unison affirmation, please join me. We pledge to create a welcoming community that celebrates human diversity, encourages spiritual growth, fosters responsiveness to our world, and commits to the future of all children. And Andrew and Sera, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we are here to dispel rumors, false beliefs, and outright ignorance about mental health crises and psychosis. Psychosis is essentially losing touch with reality. Can everyone hear that? Yeah. Okay, awesome.
When I was younger and severely depressed, I dealt with depersonalization and derealization, which is where you don't feel like a real person and you feel disconnected and distant from the real world. How is that different from psychosis?
In depersonalization, you still understand that your feeling of detachment was not aligned with objective reality. In psychosis, your subjective reality is significantly skewed from objective reality. Psychosis includes delusions and hallucinations, which are believed to be real. There are a few forms of psychosis that can be caused by severe emotional disturbances: anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and depression. I want to point out that multiple diagnoses have the disability and that they are based on a spectrum from schizophrenia, the most popular known culprit, to bipolar disorder with schizoaffective disorder and many others in between. Luckily, the same medications are used to treat all on the spectrum.
The belief that people in psychotic states are inherently dangerous is false. They are not more inherently violent than any segment of the population. The truth is, usually violence only occurs if you corner someone and they view you as a threat. People in the midst of psychosis are more likely to be the victims of violence than the perpetrators. A lot of the belief that they are dangerous began with the mischaracterization of Timothy McVeigh, who in 1995 killed 167 people in the bombing of the Alfred P. Murrah building in Oklahoma City. His popular characterization as a violent schizophrenic associates the disorder with a violent person, while a person in the midst of a psychotic episode probably would not be in a clear enough mindset to pull off an organized terrorist attack. It doesn't help that when news reports on a mass shooter, they often make reference to their mental illness, but they don't say what the alleged illness was. This leads to the popular belief that all people with these disorders are inherently violent. So, what can we do to dispel the popular notion of schizophrenia and psychosis as violent conditions?
Share real narratives about what psychosis is like and dispel myths where we can. When I originally wrote about my life, so just so you know, I actually wrote one sermon before about mental health. And so if you weren't here, so that's what the reference is. The problem was that my psychosis included competing beliefs, which makes it difficult to explain in a narrative. My experience in that state included intertwined linear and nonlinear thoughts and beliefs. It's like having many contradictory opinions that converge. Usually, towards the end, or even at the beginning of an episode, people are unaware of the situation they are in. Their delusions seem as real as any other day. However, psychosis is different for everyone. Mental health, the issues do not display themselves constantly, so it can be very difficult to determine what is normal and what is atypical for a person. Ultimately, it's asking someone whom we don't quite know to explain their normal and how they normally know. For me, during my second hospitalization for psychosis, the hospital was unable to determine my psychosis, and they relied heavily on the police report that they got.
I just didn't get formally diagnosed with anything at all until I was in my mid-20s, despite a long history of anxiety and depression going back to my early childhood.
To get a better understanding of my situation, let's go over how it began. I had just started a new job at a hospital. I was about to age out of my parents' insurance. Following my extended coverage through the Affordable Care Act, my employer gave me insurance after 3 months and then I quickly realized I could not afford my medications along with my student loans. Having student loans is a horrible way to enter the adult world. When I am contacted by Sally Mae after realizing my situation, they advised not that my parents had co-signed on my loans, so I could have them pay. But I couldn't honestly ask my parents to help me pay. So I chose to go. Okay. Okay. So I chose not to take my medications. After the first rough day without, things seemed to get better. In this state of mind, you convince yourself you don't need the meds. Even after one suicide attempt and 2 hospitalizations, still we rationalize that we do not need it. Sorry.
I had my first nervous breakdown, which are called mental health crises now, and in this case was probably an acute stress response when I was in college and didn't have insurance at all. I was under so much stress that I broke out in what can only be described as hysterical laughter over nothing in my Principles of 2D Design class. I didn't go back to any of my classes until the end of the semester. While this was my first major incident, I have had documented mental health issues since I was in elementary school. Having no insurance, or ultimately not enough insurance, is a huge barrier to getting help for mental health issues. Even when I was in the workforce full-time as a young adult, I did not have the resources to pursue the mental health treatment I knew I needed. I wasn't formally diagnosed with anything until I was 26. I was in my 30s when I first got treatment for ADHD. Lack of resources and other barriers to care play a huge role in the public's perception of mentally ill people in general as dangerous or potentially dangerous, because given the widespread access problems we all face, many people are not able to receive adequate mental health care before they reach a tipping point.
The first illusion I'm aware of was that the world was repeating itself. When I say that, I don't mean the way history repeats itself, but that we are literally in a loop. I had that delusion for a long time before informing people, because even in that state of mind, I was still skeptical. This started while I was seeing a new psychiatrist at an office with multiple physicians. Popular portrayals of the state of mind resembling Ted Kaczynski in a cabin writing his manifesto, then the reality of the condition. Psychosis can come quickly or slowly, and even trained professionals can have difficulty determining what is going on. My psychosis slowly progressed from something that seemed like reasonable eccentricities to something scarier, more instant. My father once bought me a sandwich, and my body reacted to it in a way that made me believe I was being poisoned. They sent me running from my parents. I can't clearly remember the time that I was on the run, but I remember once trying to stay the night at a local church parking lot. The church actually called the cops on me. They searched my car, found an empty bottle of GNH, and yep, a definite threat. I've dealt with good and bad members of law enforcement. Some couldn't be bothered to help me in a troubling state. Some were kind and loving. So I never paint law enforcement with one brush. However, there is definitely a need for greater training and emphasis on how to behave around the mentally ill.
When I lived in Florida, they did have dedicated law enforcement officers with additional training to deal with people in crisis. They would be sent on wellness checks to determine whether people needed additional help, and it seemed like a great program, especially since Florida seems to be a common destination for people who are struggling.
When I was on the run from my parents, I remember a time when I was parked outside a grocery store. I was terrified. I got a text from my best friend from college asking where I was. Apparently, she knew something was wrong and had contacted my parents to help. I told her where I was, and the cops were there within 10 minutes. The responding officer asked if I was okay and then left. The odd thing is, in that state of mind, I should have feared giving my friend my location. But if she asked myself to go to the hospital, I would have, without question.
I know when I was in the depths of depersonalization, I was 100% convinced that I was not a real person in the sense that everybody else was. I was sure I was puppeteering my body like a complex marionette from behind, and my entire being was a facade. I experienced extremely dulled emotion, but the one thing that I felt acutely was fear of being discovered, because I knew this was abnormal.
At first glance, it is difficult to differentiate between normal and abnormal thinking in another person. When we were working at a doctor's office, I was sent to a psychiatrist for testing due to the erratic nature of my behavior. I was tested by 2 psychiatrists. First test was for bipolar and useless because I was lost in psychosis. I was actually believing that they were testing me to be a CEO of a company, which is absurd. The second psychiatrist was able to discern I had psychosis, but was unable to figure out what kind. I was released from the work and put on the Family Medical Leave Act and didn't inform anyone that this was happening. Even when my parents sought a reason, my employer would not tell them what was going on.
I imagine that it's hard to find the line between normal or even mildly pathological strange thinking and full-on delusions. As someone currently diagnosed with an anxiety disorder and CPTSD, I am sometimes irrational and paranoid, though these symptoms don't reach the level of delusions. Even people with no documented mental health disorders sometimes experience intrusive thoughts, like the call of the void, which is sudden suicidal ideation. We also engage in cultural superstitions that have no factual basis, like having lucky and unlucky numbers or avoiding black cats. Some would say that certain religious beliefs involve a level of delusion, and some sects engage in extreme behaviors in the name of worship. Elements of mental illness are essentially found in most people. Ultimately, people as a group are strange creatures with strange ideas.
There was one instance when I was out of sorts and I was talking to my older brother. He asked if people with schizophrenia are unable to tell the difference between reality and psychosis. I quickly replied, "Don't you have the same problem? How can you tell?"
Because nobody can tell if their subjective reality aligns with objective reality.
If we understand all of this, we see the difficulty of defining a normal sense of self as opposed to a psychotic self. Even in the medical field, there are false ideas about psychosis, like that psychosis is irrational. Most of the time, it is delusions, hallucinations. In some cases, people are aware of what is happening to them. However, whatever the diagnosis, there are usually some common features in a psychotic feature. Unusual beliefs about God or the devil are frequently, and the parents often, the first perceived enemy of the psychotic person. This will greatly complicate their ability to return home when they have run out way. Sorry. Because the time it takes to heal and recover from an episode is longer than American insurances companies are willing to pay for inpatient services.
In Great Britain, the typical inpatient hospital stay for this kind of mental issue is over a month. In the US, it is often less than a week. It's common in the U.S. for people to get no further inpatient care than a mandatory 72-hour psych hold.
After my first week in the hospital, they would have released me. However, I could not be returned home. I ended up as an inpatient for 3 weeks. My second time was only a week. It's ridiculous how short-term inpatient stays are, especially when most mental illness medications take effect very slowly.
People seem to have a very negative view of inpatient mental health care as well. I remember living in Florida, the idea of being Baker acted, that is, being placed on a mandatory 72-hour psych hold, was talked about very derisively amongst my friends. There was a pervasive idea that this type of intervention just warehoused people for the legally required amount of time and served no purpose other than to disrupt the life of the unfortunate party. Notably, none of the people I know who have spoken negatively about the Baker Act has ever had a mental health crisis.
I mean, like, just to cap on what she was saying, like, for most people, mental health hospitals in that state of mind are like a safe spot. Like, you're scared of everything around you, scared of your family trying to kill you, you know, people following you and stuff when they're not. Sorry. But yeah, like, you being inside full of people that are just, you know, regimented, you don't fear them. And so it actually relaxes you. And like, I think I've definitely used more time. Okay. The strongest element of my whole episode was that whenever I put on a dress in my GPS, I would send me to the same hotel every time as it was taking me away from the danger. I ran out of gas and went home. I don't know why, because I was terrified by my parents. So that's the weird thing about this. I'm horrible with directions. And my GPS kept taking me back to the same spot. It was weird. For the next couple of months, I starved myself and locked myself in my room, pushing my dresser up against the bedroom door for safety. I thought I was being poisoned by my adoptive parents and developed the belief that food left out on the counter or the almond milk in the fridge were being left there specifically for me by my true parents. At this point, I was eating so little that I began to pass out. I was showering at night to avoid my parents and getting out of an especially hot shower. I passed out trying to grab for the sink and fell directly on the ground. My parents caught on to how to get me to eat, but I weighed nearly nothing at that point. They didn't actually see me for up to a month or at a time, and always wondered how I knew when they were not at home. Well, the thing is my dog Gracie, every single time when they would leave, the dog would come and bark at my door. So I knew they were gone. He's like, that's how I got food. One day I decided to put my dresser away from the door and make a run for it. The only reason there was gas in my car was because my dad was filling the tank so that I could take myself to my psychiatrist. I took this as a miracle and drove as far south as it possibly could go. The whole time, I thought a relative was following me. When I ran out of gas, I pulled into a Walmart parking lot, went in, called the cops. They were suspicious about what was going on, and didn't believe in my story. After the paramedics looked me over, I was given two choices. One was to go home, and the other to go to a mental hospital. I chose the mental hospital and fell asleep in the car on the way home, on the way there. When we arrived at the mental hospital, I had turned away, and so the cops dropped at a homeless shelter. There I ate the first meals I had in months and slept without fear. Unknown to me, my parents had driven down to the courthouse and made me a ward of the state. After 3 days, I was picked up again by police and taken back to the first hospital. Yeah, that was something that's like, it's either, was it harm yourself or harm others? Like, it's, the standard is to harm others or harm self. And like, a lot of things are ignored by doing that. Schizophrenia is rare, either of those things. Or it has to progress far enough that it's extremely dangerous, like starvation and stuff. Sorry. But yeah, like so. Unknown to me, my parents had driven down to the courthouse and made me a ward of the state. After 3 days, I was picked up. I think I was back. The bathroom had puddles in the water. The lunches were in saggy brown paper bags. As a protest, I refused medication. They referred me to a different hospital that same day. I still remember the sandwich I was given in the second hospital. I had starved myself for so long that I was desperate for nutrition. Every time that I refused food, I was given a milkshake. Not a bad diet. Let's see. Okay. After 3 weeks as an inpatient there, I called my parents and they came and got me. It took 6 months of recovery before I felt like I could go back to work. So far in my life, it's been 10 years of experimenting with medications and test treatment to try and reach a workable state of mind.
I'm also still working on that. Employment can be an extremely complicated process for people with mental disorders. Even just interviewing for jobs is often a nightmare.
After my psychotic break, I was scored to return to my old job to an environment where people knew what I did. I initially thought I couldn't handle them, but called back to try to resume my work. My employer informed me that my position was no longer available. I applied to other positions in the company, interviewed twice, and was unable to get a different job there.
Disclosing a mental or neurological condition during the hiring process usually results in rejection, even though it is illegal to discriminate against candidates due to such disorders. Needing time off from work also damages your chances of advancing, and large gaps in employment look terrible on your resume.
In one instance, when I was being onboarded for a job, the woman showing me the ropes discussed with me her previous job at a mental institution. She told me that she worked with the crazy of the crazies.
I am currently struggling with agoraphobia on top of more generalized anxiety and my physical recovery from back surgery. At this point, I am not well enough to do most jobs, including what I went to school for, but I also haven't worked in over a year. It's an incredible strain, and I am currently at risk of eviction if I can't figure out something relatively soon. On top of that, I'm still struggling to find a therapist so that I can become well enough to work. If anyone knows of one that might take my insurance, please let me know.
Thank you. In the depths of mental illness, it is easy to lose hope in your life, but I also experienced several acts of kindness during my psychotic break. Once, when all of my credit cards were maxed out, someone at a Wendy's gave me food after each card was declined. When I was out of gas, a good Samaritan pushed my car in a good gas station, to a gas station and gave me $5, which got me home. Once I went through the drive-thru at Burger Joint and ordered a large strawberry shake. They said they were out, but when I went to the next window, they gave me one free anyway. At the time, I noticed that the car in front of me had a religious license plate. I found myself behind the 4 cars in total, having them each license plate, and I took it as a sign of hope. Well, it was kind of weird. It was kind of weird. Like, it was actually like kind of like one would just break away and then there'd be another one in front of it. And I mean, like, I don't know. If it's a delusion, it's one that's a positive one. Something that gives you hope, something that gets you by. But yeah.
Ultimately, kindness, compassion, and a lack of judgment make a world of difference to people who are struggling. A sense of community gives us all hope that life is not as cruel as it can seem. Recognizing that even those in crisis deserve respect, dignity, and care is the foundation of a humane society, an ideal we've yet to fully reach, but we should all be striving for.
Scarce resource.
Thank you guys for a very brave and open message to us. And I think we have time for some questions or comments.
Yeah, I want to thank you both for your courage and, telling everyone what it's like. There are so many people who suffer from mental illness, and it's all pushed away and hidden, and that shouldn't be the way it is. My daughter suffers. She's intellectually challenged, and she also has mental illness. And we had to fight when she was in high school to get her admitted to the hospital. It was awful. It was a real challenge. But what I also wanted to mention and let everybody know is on the way here, I heard an article about the present administration has withdrawn money that the Biden administration had given for a 5-year period to elementary schools for mental health professionals. And they are taking the money away before the 5 years is even up. And this means that the schools cannot have the mental health professionals support their students who need it. They interviewed a principal at a school who said he doesn't know what he's going to do now that he has to withdraw the 5 professionals that he hired with this money because there are so many kids that need to take advantage of what the professionals have to offer. So, we're going backwards. But thank you very much. I really, really appreciate what you uncovered.
I will say, when I was in school, my guidance counselor was the reason I graduated at all. And my brother, who is still in school, currently relies on the school counselor to be able to talk about his own anxiety. So it is a major loss for us to lose the money like that.
I wanted to echo Betsy's gratitude and admiration for your courage in sharing your experiences with us. I started my career working at a research lab doing research and publishing research in schizophrenia. And over the years, I've realized just how inadequate my perspective on what mental illness is. I really believe it's not just something that happens on the inside with neurotransmitters, but it's also something that happens to us from the outside. It's how society treats people that end up with a diagnosis. As soon as you get the label begins to erode your humanity. And I think the challenge for all of us as a society is our challenge as a society is to really understand what's happening to the lives of human beings as a result of experiencing these challenges. I believe that in a normal course of life that we operate on a kind of horizontal axis that keeps us open to connections to other people, ideas. And what mental illness does is reorient that access to a vertical access. So we're now in an up and down mode, and we feel like we're being pulled down, or people with personality disorders that are driven by narcissism, hate, envy, they want to strive to climb up above everybody else. And so what I admire about both of you is you are intentionally reorienting to the horizontal by connecting with us and by sharing your experiences with us. And there isn't a person in this room that hasn't experienced anxiety, depression, confusion. We may not know it in the level of intensity that you guys have experienced, but it's part of being human. And I don't want to use the word treatment, but the best solution is that connection to the other people and the world around you. And you guys help us to figure out what's the best way to do that for you guys as we try to ask you to do it for us. So I know that was rambling, but thanks.
Good rambling. Who's somebody on Zoom?
There's a question. In the white.
Joel posted a question in the chat.
Have either of you applied for Social Security income, SSI? And if so, what has been your experience of doing so?
I have it. Actually, I got lucky and I got it like the first time, but for most people, it's not that.
I got denied. I probably just need more documentation of my agoraphobia and CPTSD, but I've been denied twice now.
Don't think it's just the dumb and dumbers out there. When I went, well, I don't know if I'm still going through it, but I started depression in 1988. I had lunch with eminent professors, PhDs, all of them. They thought I was weak because I was depressed. What's the matter with you? You're weak. Not in those terms, but you get the idea. 5 or 6 of them. It wasn't just isolated to one. It's a stigma.
It's not only a stigma, it's it makes a financial difference. As he said, he had severe depression in 1988. In 2007, when we applied, did some estate planning, and wanted to get health insurance. Guess what? Long-term health care. He had taken lithium 20 years ago. Prior to that, to help his depression. And guess what? You can't get long-term health insurance if you've ever taken lithium.
Because the rate of suicide is high. And my daughter said, it's funny, sometimes people try and they fail, so then they got to pay money. Said, my dad would never fail. If he decides he's going to do it, it's done. Yeah, very structured.
Yeah, Tim, just in response to your comments and, labeling, and I think as a society, when we look at mental health challenges, it always starts with the question of what's wrong with you. Yeah. And the mental health movement now wants to change that question to what's wrong with you. And that's the question that was in my mind as I was listening to you guys and saw your courage as a strength. And so what's strong in you is what we need to be looking at. And that's the question we as a society should be asking.
I actually once was at a bar, and some girl walked up and talked to me. And the first thing that came out of her mouth is, "What do you have? Like, what mental illness do you have?" And first you think like, "Well, that's inappropriate." And then she was like, "Well, everyone has something."
That is probably true. I just was thinking in terms of this period in our history of COVID and post-COVID and how it impacted little kids and how it impacted big kids and adults and everyone across the board. It's been fascinating to watch the process of realizing how much that isolation caused so much anxiety for people, and the whole issue that you were bringing up, Sarah, in terms of diagnosis. And I think it was so widespread, because everybody felt like that it's really been interesting to watch Ian and his friends in college struggle with it. My cousin, who's a teacher, and went back to teaching by Zoom initially during COVID in New York City. And one of the things that she finds is that her world was so kid-focused for so long that after all that time teaching by Zoom, what she's found is her life is so much more random, because people that she doesn't know will say to her, "Oh, I loved your class about blah, blah, blah," because it's parents in the room or grandparents in the room when the little kid is on the Zoom teaching set up that have heard Miss Patricia teaching Spanish for, now a year, who recognize her, but she has no idea who they are. So that sense that so for her was kind of anxiety producing, and that everybody in her neighborhood knew who she was. She had no idea who they were. So but I mention it in those two examples, Ian and his classmates in college and her with the little kids, because I think one of the affirmative things that's coming out of it is that they are kind of getting away from diagnosis in some respects and beginning to understand how much of it is kind of environmental and circumstantial. And in many respects, they still need the counselors, but what they need is the contextual understanding that I think Tom was alluding to by changing the questions. And that contextual understanding does help, I think, on the margins, and helps to drive more personal acceptance of the situation, as well as kind of communal acceptance. But I really appreciate your talk today.
I will say I had a great time during the pandemic being completely alone.
Hello, thank you guys very much. For the 26 years that I took lithium, it was like, it functioned very well as sort of like training wheels. It kept things calmer for me to learn how it worked. But eventually I started to feel limited by it and realized that I could be better if I simply learned the things I knew about my cycle, which happened so fast that I got to practice it all the time. And so I decided to stop taking it. And when I told my psychiatrist, he was very unsupportive and negative. He said, "You're going to end up in a hospital, and you're going to be a lost cause." And I thought, what about like celebrating the possibility that a human being could understand the relationship with something and be strong with it? And my talk therapists were on board with that, but the person who prescribed medication was against it. And I don't think it was like, pharmaceutical conspiracy. I think we just really didn't get very far before we started going backwards again in terms of people understanding that not everything is a limitation, that there's a way to reframe things. That would be a goal, I think, that would be great to achieve, to change that mindset.
Well, my lithium was to help with another drug. They call it a lithium kicker. But now the drugs are better. So I don't take it. I take different stuff now. You're awful quiet.
Yes, but you're not.
I also want to thank you both for speaking up and speaking out about what you've been through, and for working together on that. It's really wonderful to see your partnership. And I mean, a number of facts came out, but one of the things that really got to me, Sera, was when you said, I think that the average, or maybe the top time that one would spend in the hospital for an episode was 72 hours. And I just thought, I mean, you go in for a physical procedure, and very often you're there for 3, 4, 5 days, and then you go out to rehab for, could be weeks at a time. And it's just so ridiculous that you expect to fix something just because it's invisible in that amount of time. It's just incredible to me.
I had when I got out of the hospital, I was told not to tell anyone about it. Nothing. They wanted me to tell them. They said that the stigma was too much. You won't find work. You won't function basically. But so I was told not to tell anyone at all. They said that the stigma was too great, which I see like the short-term benefit but the long-term detriment. Like if you don't tell people and give people examples of people that are functioning with the mental illness, then people just continue on with their false beliefs. So.
I actually had a friend who got hospitalized when I was in high school, and she was in for about a month, which is a lot. But I remember being deeply, deeply envious because I knew at that time that I was extremely ill and I was not getting treatment, and it's a bizarre thing to think about, but I was deeply jealous of my friend for being able to get any help at all.
I have a comment, and that is, it's very common to feel, to be depressed about being different, not fitting into a particular pattern. And some people might say, what's wrong with you? You're not like the rest. In reality, that should be celebrated, because people who are different might not be able to have the skills to do everything, but they have other skills that can help society, and they can teach other people about areas where they excel. So being different is great, should be celebrated.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I tell you, one thing this really strikes me is how everybody's got a personal story involving something like this. It's you guys are not alone speaking to a bunch of people who aren't like you. There's a lot of people and people that are very much in similar situations, so it's just interesting to see that come out of the congregation. And thanks again for a remarkable performance. And now it is time for our musical reflection and offering. If you're a guest or visitor, please don't feel obligated to give. Your presence today is gift enough.
Do not attempt to understand these lyrics.
And now it's time for joys and sorrows. I think we covered some joys and sorrows in the comments after the presentation, but one quick joy for me is the joyful noise of the little guys in back. We love to hear that. And And does anyone else have anything they'd like to share? Got Jenny here.
I have a joy, and it's at a great time. Our grandson, Damien, is in the 8th grade, and he is somewhere on the spectrum, and he has trouble motor skills writing, but he's very good at the computer. And so 2 or 3 times this year, he has broken through their security and sent emails telling them they should pep up their security because he can get through their walls. So they had a meeting and decided that he has IET. So they had a meeting and decided that next year he should be in high school. He should be the intern for the computer system, and he checks to make sure that it's safe and that they can't break through the walls. But so far he has done it 3 times. So, but thankfully he always tells them, and they thank him and try to fix it. So.
That's what the government does. They hire the hackers. They hire hackers in the government because they break into and pay them.
I have a concern. Our granddaughter, who is away at college, was not arrested, but picked up for vandalism for putting up flyers about sanctuary and in Boston. And the part that is most concerning is she knew she wasn't supposed to do this, but she felt that it was important enough that there be sanctuary. And she is being put before a disciplinary board at the university, and she can have no representation and no one can speak for her. She can bring an advocate, but the advocate cannot speak. And we have no idea what the disciplinary action will be.
So if I seem a little less jovial, as I normally am, I'm really upset.
Silent no more, Tim. It's several months between Susanna and myself. We visit here, so it's very, very special to be here because we love you all.
I echo that, but I have another joy, and that is that a year ago, January, my younger sister, Ruth, had kidney surgery, had a tumor, and she's had immunotherapy since then, and last Friday she had what they have told her is, yes, the last immunotherapy, and and she's clear and fine. Of course, they'll be keeping watch over 3 months and so on, but it's a great joy that we did not count on.
Good. Anybody on Zoom?
Alan, back in the corner here, I do have a thing, and I'll keep this a short version. I have been recently diagnosed with what is called papillary thyroid carcinoma. And despite that being the big scary C word, it actually has a very good prognosis. It is curable. Even recurrences are generally curable. I have an ENT appointment in 2 or 3 weeks. I will know more then. I am currently operating under the assumption I will probably have a partial or complete thyroidectomy. So more details to follow.
Wow.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Our closing hymn, please stand and sing if you're able. Now, Go Lift It Up, number 1057.
Go lift it up, love bless your way. Moonlight, starlight, guide your journey into peace and the brightness of day. Let me sing it again. Oh, lift it up, love bless your way. Moonlight, starlight, guide your journey into peace and the brightness of day.
And I want to slide in two dates here before we do our closing words. 1865, on this date, Abraham Lincoln was buried in Springfield, Illinois. The train carrying his body had traveled through 7 states and 180 cities. And in 1970, on this date, was the Kent State tragedy. Our closing words are from Matt Haig, an English author and journalist who has written on mental health and who himself has been diagnosed with autism and ADHD. Mental health problems don't define who you are. They are something you experience. You walk in the rain and you feel the rain, but importantly, you are not the rain. And thank you all for coming today, and I hope everybody can congregate in the Quimby room.